Today, we're diving into the book of Daniel, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. See, we're not just looking at it as an ancient text. We're treating it like an incredible literary puzzle. It's got a hidden structure, a kind of secret code, and we're going to crack it together. And right away, the first clue is a total head-scratcher. Get this. Right in the middle of a sentence in chapter 2, the language just switches. It goes from Hebrew to Aramaic, stays that way for 6 whole chapters, and then flips right back. Why? I promise you, this is not some ancient typo, it's a clue. A breadcrumb trail left for us to follow. And that strange language switch, well, that's the key to the whole thing. It unlocks the book's incredibly powerful message. So you gotta think of it less like a mistake and more like a treasure map, pointing us straight to the heart of the story. So let's start by looking at the obvious ways we might try to organize this book. Now, at first glance, the book seems to split pretty neatly in half. The easiest way to slice it is just by genre, which kind of gives you a clear before and after. So the first 6 chapters are these amazing narrative court stories. They're told in the third person, exciting tales about staying faithful in a foreign land. Then, bam, everything shifts. Chapters 7 through 12 flip to the first person, and suddenly we're reading these complex, symbolic, and frankly, pretty terrifying apocalyptic visions. But these court stories were so much more than just entertainment. For the Jewish people who were living in exile, these stories were a lifeline. They built up their sense of identity, showed them how to stay faithful when everything was against them, and gave them hope that God was still in charge, even over these powerful foreign kings. Okay, so organizing by genre seems simple enough, right? But just when you think you've got a handle on it, you look at the book's chronology, and that's when you find a massive glitch in the timeline that just messes up any simple linear reading. Just take a look at this. The book starts out just fine, moving forward in time. 605 BC in chapter 1, then 603 in chapter 2. But then you hit chapter 7, and the timeline suddenly leaps backwards by decades. The story is completely scrambled. It's not in order at all. So if the book isn't organized by what it's about or when it happened, then what in the world is the secret here? Well, that jumbled timeline, that's our next big clue. It's practically screaming at us to look for a totally different kind of pattern. And that new pattern brings us right back to our very first mystery. You see, the answer isn't in the genre, and it's not in the timeline. The secret code is hidden inside that weird language switch. That entire section written in Aramaic, all the way from chapter 2 through chapter 7, it's not just a random block of text. It has been brilliantly and intentionally designed to be the interpretive key to the whole book. And here it is. This is the hidden structure. The Aramaic chapters are laid out in this beautiful mirrored pattern. Chapter 2 pairs perfectly with chapter 7. They're both about 4 human kingdoms and 1 divine kingdom. Chapter 3, with the fiery furnace, mirrors chapter 6 with the lion's den. And what's left, right in the dead center, chapters 4 and 5. Now, this clever literary structure has a name. It's called a chiasm. It's named after the Greek letter chi, which looks like an X. And that X shape is perfect because the whole point is that the structure folds in on itself to draw all of your attention to the single most important message, which is always placed right at the heart of the pattern. So now that we've found this center of this incredible puzzle, we can finally figure out the book's core theme. Let's zoom in on that center and see what the author wanted to make absolutely sure we didn't miss. And the message is just crystal clear. Right at the center of this masterful design, you have a powerful warning about human arrogance versus divine authority. It's all about proud kings who think they're untouchable and then have to face God's judgment. And we see this played out in a tale of 2 kings. In chapter 4, you have Nebuchadnezzar. He's judged for his pride. Yeah, but he gets it. He learns his lesson, praises God, and he's restored. Then in chapter 5, you get King Belshazzar. He's also judged, but he arrogantly just thumbs his nose at God, and he's destroyed in an instant. It's this amazing contrast between wisdom and total foolishness. So, you might be asking, why go to all this trouble? Why create such a complex literary design? Well, for the original audience, this structure wasn't just a neat puzzle. It was a blueprint for hope in a really dark time. This whole chiastic structure just hammered home 3 essential truths for people trying to survive in exile. Number 1, God's kingdom will win in the end, outlasting all human empires. 2, God's people can stay faithful, even when it looks like it'll cost them their lives. And 3, God will judge the arrogant rulers who are oppressing them. So really, that's the whole point of this intricate Aramaic puzzle. It's meant to build a theological foundation. It's designed to give the reader the strength and the perspective they desperately need to understand and get through the really difficult visions of suffering that are coming in the book's final chapters. I mean, the book of Daniel is just a masterclass in how the structure of a story can be the message. And it leaves you with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? What other great stories, whether they're ancient or modern, are hiding their deepest meanings not just in what they say, but in the very way they are built?